Hey everybody, welcome to Big Valley Living. I'm Michelle and welcome to Souptember. I am making for you tonight one of my very favorite soups. It is a mushroom and wild rice soup. I think I've been eating this for about 15 years and it is absolutely amazing. You must try it. I want to thank LeAnne at Mennonite Farmhouse for inviting us to be a part of Souptember. It's super exciting and we love this soup. It's very unique and it has a flavor that just tastes like it's almost like a stew. It's amazing. So please try it. A few things we need to tell you here is that on October 7th, LeAnne at Mennonite Farmhouse is actually going to be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card and two $50 Amazon gift cards. What you need to do to be considered for these drawings is to make sure that you leave a very nice and kind comment to each one of the collaborators and creators, and you will be picked by a random comment picker. Thanks again to LeAnne for inviting us, and for everybody watching. I'm at the beginning of the month and I've already seen amazing channels and recipes. Make sure that you go to everybody's channel and consider subscribing. Thanks again. Oh, let's go make this. You're gonna love it. We're going to add 8 cups of filtered water, 1 tablespoon of salt, iodized is just fine, and then we're going to take our rinsed wild rice. Did you know that wild rice is actually a grass and not a rice? All of the ingredients need to go into the pot cold, and then we're going to bring them up to a boil, and then we're going to simmer them uncovered for approximately 45 minutes. We've come to a boil and now I'm just going to go ahead and stir it real quickly. Turn it down to about 2.5 on my electric stove and I'll set the timer for 45 minutes. We're going to slice up, it calls for 8 ounces of criminy mushrooms and they need to be rough chopped. And I like mushrooms a lot, so I got a pound. Took the stems out. I didn't weigh it, but this is probably closer to 3/4 of a pound. More shrooms, please. Thank you. 1 ounce of, it calls for porcini mushrooms. I just buy a wild mushroom mix because I like to have a little bit of extra flavor in there. And you can get any brand you want. I get mine at Whole Foods. And in this bowl of mushrooms, I'm going to pour 1.5 cups of boiling water over them. Had there been meat on here prior, and I was doing vegetables, I would have definitely used a new cutting board. So we're just going to give this a rough chop because it's going to go into a pan with some butter to render off its fat before we add more delicious ingredients. Wild rice is the official grain of the state of Minnesota in the USA. How cool is that? But you know what? We also grow it in California, they grow it in Wisconsin, and it's also grown in Canada. If you've never cleaned and cut a leek before, I'm just going to show you real quick that we want a little bit of the green part right here, but I'm not taking all of this part, okay? So I'm just going to put that out to the compost. But you do want to take this part of the leek, and because of how they're grown, they do have grit in them. Just slice them down the center, roughly. Now I'm going to take them to the sink and I'm going to rinse them very well. So without moving you to the sink, what I want to show you real quickly is what I did. Under running water, I just spread these out like fans and made sure that I got all the dirt out. So there's no grit in there. And now we're just going to go ahead and slice them up. Keep them small. Think of a green onion with a lot more fiber. That's the best way to describe them. They have a fabulous flavor. but they do need to cook down a little bit, and you do want the pieces to be just a little bit thin to ensure that you get them cooked and softened all the way through. Probably should have used a bigger knife, but here we are. Here we are. This soup is just, I'm gonna keep saying it, the soup is absolutely amazing. It has all kinds of fun, different flavors that you wouldn't expect, and it does have a wild flavor because it is wild rice soup, and we also have the wild mushroom mix, okay? But anyway, it calls for 1 leek, so I went about halfway up the stalk, and I'd say that this is probably somewhere between 3/4 and 1 cup of chopped leek. While we're here, I need to make sure that we have 3 tablespoons of minced flat leaf parsley. Part of this is going to go into some of our butter to make a compound butter, and then we're also going to put just a little bit off to the side to sprinkle on top of our soup. So I'll probably leave some a little bit larger just for garnish. And that's about 3 tablespoons. I'm not going to mince it. I mean, I'm not going to get, you know, real crazy about it, but this is going to make it pretty. And there's some nutritional value in this too. So the rice is actually done. I'm going to turn it off and let it sit there. We've melted some butter, and I'm putting this pancetta in here, and we're going to kind of break it up. And we have it, we're going to cook it at medium high. I'm putting it on 8. And we're going to continue to break it up a little bit with the butter until the pancetta releases some of its fat and starts to turn a lighter color of pink on the meaty part. This shouldn't take but about 5 minutes at the most. Oh boy, if we had smell-o-vision. That took just a couple minutes, and you can see that we have a little bit of fond in there. These little browned bits. I like the way that looks. Smells amazing. Now we're going to add the leeks. I'll give that a quick stir, and they're going to start releasing their liquid as well. They're already getting fragrant. That's really nice. It smells really good. I'm going to turn this down just a hair, but we are going to put the mushrooms that we just chopped up right on into there. And they're going to add liquid, obviously, because they're going to release that. And again, I did use a little more than it calls for, because I have made this soup every year since I found the recipe in Sunset Magazine. I'll put a link down below for the original recipe. I want to say I've had this recipe going now for somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 years. I can't remember exactly when I found it. But I'll tell you what, it's a winner. It is also worth noting that you cannot can this soup for several reasons. One, it's not an approved recipe. It has a smoked meat in it, it has rice or grass in it, and it has cream in it. So on many levels, this is not a safe recipe to can. It does freeze and reheat beautifully, or you can keep it in the refrigerator for 3 days to 5 days. If you're going to keep it longer than that, I would highly recommend freezing it, just to make sure that you have safety in mind. Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh. Okay, now while that's cooking down, I'm actually going to go over and I'm going to drain off the water, which is also called the liquor, from the wild mushrooms, the porcini mushrooms, okay? And then we're going to roughly chop these to add into the soup as well. As you can see, these mushrooms have given off their liquid. See, the fond has already come up from the bottom naturally. And I finely chopped the drained wild mushrooms, porcini if you have a solid mix of porcini. And we are going to add that to the pot. In addition to being called lake rice, The reason that it's called lake rice sometimes is that it grows in tidal zones and also in shallow rivers and lake beds. Stir this together, and then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and that's gonna serve to make this a thick soup. Remember, we do have some chicken broth and some cream that's gonna be coming into the soup, and not too long. So, here's my flour. Now what we're gonna do is sprinkle 2 tablespoons of flour on here because we don't want clumps. Creamy soup should be creamy. And I'm gonna hopefully let that cook off a little bit so that it doesn't have that raw floury taste. So we're gonna mix that in very, very well. And there's plenty of liquid in there, which is nice. Just make sure you don't have any clumps. Just like when you're making gravy, okay? There we go. You can see that the leek is lifting away, much like a traditional onion. This is such a beautiful and unique flavor and smell, and perfect for fall. It's really nice on a rainy day to have a cup of this. Then you're going to want another cup and another cup. And I'm actually taking it for lunch tomorrow to work because it's cooling down in the Big Valley. All right, so I let that go. And did you know that the Native Americans harvested wild rice by canoe? That's super cool. Okay, now I'm going to take a half a cup of a dry white wine. I'm using a Riesling. The alcohol is going to cook off. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I need to turn that down. Once that flour went in there. Okay, no problem. We're going to have a lot of liquid coming in at this point, everybody. So, ooh. Gave it a little caramelization too, which is just going to add to the goodness. Then we're going to take the reserved water that we soaked the mushrooms in, and we're going to put it in slowly because we don't want any grit that may have been in there. So I'm just going to add this slowly. I can smell the wine cooking off. It gives it a wonderful richness. If you don't want the wine, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you the grit that's left in just a minute. I'm stopping at that point because hopefully you can see the grit. We just don't want that in there. Okay, that just added more mushroomy goodness. Now I am going to turn it back up to 8. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's like so rich. And 4 cups of low sodium chicken broth. If you can your own, go ahead and put it in there. You can also use vegetable broth in here, so you're not stuck to using a meat broth if you wish to keep it more on the vegan side. And again, that's another reason you don't have to have the pancetta. I may make a vegan or a whole food plant-based version of this later in the year. Oops, to show you that it can work. We're going to let that come up while we put the butter and parsley together. Now we're going to take the other 4 tablespoons of room temperature softened butter, and we're going to add our 3 tablespoons of minced flat leaf parsley and about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to mix this to combine. This really makes the soup just that much more decadent when we end up putting it all together. So please don't skip this step. If you're making this whole food plant-based, then use your favorite plant-based butter. That would work just as well. But I did use, just so you know, I used creamery butter here, dairy butter, And I used salted, so that's why we just put a little bit of pepper in there. Oh goodness, you guys, that looks so good. At the same time, I've measured out 2/3 of a cup of heavy whipping cream, which is going to go into the soup at the very end. We are almost there, everybody. And look at this nice simmer we have going on. Don't get too crazy when you're stirring it. It might go all over the place. I took the rice and I drained it. Now I want you to notice that the rice actually has broken open a little bit. If you've never had wild rice, it is chewy. I do not recommend using a mix, but if you've never had it before and you're a little nervous, go ahead and use a mix. But it's not necessary. It really isn't. I added the drained wild rice in here. And now what we're gonna do is bring it up to a boil, and then we're gonna reduce the heat, and I'm gonna simmer it for about 15 minutes. Okay, see, we came up to a boil there. Everything's mixing together nicely. So I was on a 9. I'm gonna take it down to about 7.5 and let everything come together. I will set a timer and I will stir occasionally, okay? Alrighty, see how that's like really beefy and meaty, like a stew? Everything is about perfect. What we wanted was for that to reduce. You see how the liquid went down by probably a 1/2 inch or so, and that's a pretty big pot. So the last thing we're gonna do, is we're gonna add 2/3 of a cup of heavy whipping cream. We've got a little bit more cream. Put that in there. Oh, this is beautiful. Now I'm gonna let this cook through for just another probably couple minutes and get everything incorporated together. Goodness gracious, everybody. Nothing like wild rice and mushroom soup. So let's serve some up. I like a little soupy soup with mine. Thanks again for visiting Big Valley Living. We appreciate you stopping by. Happy Souptember. Make sure that you tune in to Mennonite Farmhouse on YouTube at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on September 7th, 2023. If you've left a comment in all of the other collaborators' videos, you increase your chances of winning either a $100 Amazon gift card or one of 2 $50 Amazon gift cards. If I know LeAnne, there will probably be a few other little surprises that night. So we'll see you there. Have a great day. See you later, everybody. Be kind.